Hi, I'm Melissa Borunda, and I'm here to talk about initiatives and referendums in Arizona. I'm going to start with providing the basic definitions of an initiative and a referendum. An initiative is the way that voters are able to propose new laws or amend existing ones. A referendum is the way that voters can veto a law or part of a law. Next, I'm going to explain how initiatives and referendums are created. So in Arizona, to create an initiative, there's a series of steps that you have to follow. The first step is to clearly and specifically write out the law or constitutional amendment that you are proposing. Once you've done that, you need to go to the Secretary of State to file and pay a fee. After you've filed, you need to get a certain number of signatures from registered voters. For state initiatives, the requirement is 10% of the votes from the last gubernatorial election, and that's the election where the governor was chosen. You have to collect the signatures within 18 months of having filed the initiative. Once you've collected your signatures, you submit them to the Secretary of State for verification, and that's done by checking the signatures against the voter registration records. Once the signatures get verified, the Secretary of State will certify the initiative and it goes onto the ballot for the next election. If a majority of voters approve your measure during the next election, it becomes law. For referendums, excuse me, there are legislative referendums and those proposed by citizens. For a legislative referendum, which is where the legislature puts a measure on the ballot by passing a bill that requires voter approval, if both the House and the Senate approve the bill by a majority, it will be included in the next election ballot, and if it gets enough votes, it passes. Um, for referendums that are proposed by citizens, like with initiatives, they have to get enough signatures from registered voters. So within 18 months of filing, and then the signatures are submitted to and verified by the Secretary of State. Once again, the signatures get verified, the measure goes on the ballot, and if it gets enough votes, it passes. So lots of similarities there. All right, now I will compare and contrast initiatives and referendums. So both are parts of direct democracy and both require voter approval to pass. Both allow for public involvement in the democratic legislative process. That's kind of where their similarities end. Um, an initiative, as we know, deals with the proposing of new laws, whereas a referendum has to do with laws or policies that are already proposed and already in place. Initiatives are citizen driven. The citizens are the ones who see an issue that affects the people of their state, and they're the ones to make a move to try to fix that issue. Referendums are government driven. And as I said, they speak to the laws that are already in place. On that note, initiatives can cover a wide range of topics, anything that affects the people of their state, whereas referendums tend to focus on specific legislative issues. Pros and cons of initiatives and referendums. Pros of initiatives. They are goal oriented. There's a clear issue and a clear direction to go in, and everyone knows what the objectives are. How are we going to solve this problem? They are innovative and they encourage creative thinking and problem solving. So again, speaking to being goal oriented, people know there's a problem and everyone can kind of start thinking like, how are we going to solve it? Let's think outside the box. What can we do? They bring people together and get them engaged. They make people feel like their opinions and ideas are important, and they encourage people to work together to reach the goal, to be creative. They help with allocating resources in the best way possible. That way, areas that need the most support get resources, and resources aren't wasted. Now we go to the cons of initiatives. Speaking of resources, they can be a big drain on resources, right? They require a lot of manpower, a lot of time, and a lot of money, and that can just be really exhausting. They can be overwhelming. Change can be really hard for people, so to propose too much of it can turn people off and make them just totally disengage and just not want to vote for any initiatives. They want to see anything different. They just would rather than like deal with so much change, they'd almost just rather leave things the way they are, even if they're not happy with them. Some initiatives only look at a short-term goal and they don't think about the long term. And when that happens, that can lead to changes being made that aren't sustainable over time. So you end up with another problem. All right, the pros of referendums. They encourage participation among citizens by getting them to take an active role in the decision-making process. And hopefully that creates a sense of responsibility amongst one another and to one another. They ensure representation because they make sure that the thoughts and ideas of the people of the state are what's being heard. Um, and so that gives an accurate representation of how people in the state are feeling. They empower citizens by giving them a voice and a chance to change their lives for the better, which is great. They also serve as a checks and balances system. They make sure that the government is making decisions that align with the feelings of the people that they serve, and they're not just making decisions based on what is best for them. Some cons of referendums. They can sometimes oversimplify really complex ideas that can spread to that can lead to misinformation being spread and uninformed decision making. It's not about people understanding what they're voting for. It's truly understanding. It's just about like, listen to what we're telling you. This is all you need to know. And that's not helpful for anyone. Referendums also tend to be very polarizing, and that can kind of create an us versus them mentality, which just leads to a very divisive society. And it stops us from progressing and moving forward. So, not good for anyone. Okay, finally, I'm going to explain how initiatives and referendums support the idea of direct democracy as outlined in the Arizona Constitution. So, we know that direct democracy is a system that lets citizens participate directly in the decision-making process rather than just relying on elected officials or representatives. Um, in Arizona, the way that people can vote on laws and policies is through referendums and initiatives. Through initiatives, people can propose new laws or amendments, as we know, um, directly. As we said earlier, they can gather enough signatures to get their proposal on the ballot and go from there. This gives people the power to bypass the legislature when they feel that their needs or concerns are not being met or listened to. Once the measure's on the ballot, the people can vote directly on it or not, or I'm sorry, vote whether or not to support it. And that way they're directly shaping the legislation of their state. With referendums, they let voters approve or reject laws passed by the legislature. In Arizona, certain laws can be referred to the ballot for public vote. This helps to hold elected officials accountable for their actions by allowing the public to weigh in on important legislative decisions. What else? Referendums also increase public involvement in government, which makes sure that the laws reflect what the citizens of the state want. And I think that's it. Thank you. Oh no.